Good evening, Alofis, and welcome to tonight's bulletin of BCA News. Leading the news tonight and in the lead up to the largest conference on climate change, the United Nations COP26, Pacific leaders are still talking about the challenges over accessing climate finance. BCA News spoke with the Minister of Natural Resources, Honourable Mona Ainu, who said that accessing climate finance is a lengthy and difficult process. Here's more on that story. COP26 will be held in Glasgow, Scotland this year from the 1st to the 12th of November. This is year 26 of the annual conference on climate change and will bring together heads of governments, scientists and climate experts and campaigners to agree on coordinated action to tackle climate change. In the past few weeks leading up to COP26, regional media have reported that this year's host, Great Britain, will focus on getting the Western nations to fulfill their commitments made in Paris to providing $100 billion for the Green Climate Fund. To date, only about half of that money has been made available. In the past decade, $2.2 billion has been provided to the Pacific region for this purpose. The Pacific Islands are some of the most vulnerable countries to the impacts of increasing frequency of natural disasters and the increasing intensity of tropical cyclones. Many in Niue will still remember the Category 5 Cyclone Hatta, which struck Niue 17 years ago in January of 2004. The Minister of Natural Resources, responsible for the portfolios of the Environment Department, Met Office and the Department of Agriculture, Forestry and Fisheries, is Honourable Mona Ainu. She says that the financial assistance pledge from the Western countries seem like a great deal of money, but that these funds are very difficult to access.
The pledge is very big in figures. It's a huge number, but that's basically nothing in comparison to what's been happening. And as the Pacific Bloc, we will continue to call on them to commit to their pledge, and this is something that has been happening. But also in regards to what's been happening for us here domestically is just trying to review some of the ways or establish mechanisms that we're able to access those funds. Those funds are very, very difficult to get. They take a lengthy process and just very, very difficult, as we have found out over the last few years. However, it is not impossible to get these funds, but we are trying different ways. Recently, also in the last couple of years, the NOW project have also established the sustainable financing strategy as well. And these are some of the areas that we can tap into to try and get some funds to undertake our projects here, especially our adaptation and mitigation, and even the science part. It's very difficult for us to understand, but we need all this money.
Minister Ainu says that while it may be difficult to access these funds, the government is grateful for whatever assistance is granted to help Niue's adaptation and mitigation projects. She explains that after months of processes, Niue government officials are this week finalizing the paperwork to access the $7.7 million from the Green Climate Fund. This fund will finance a 5-year project which will employ up to 7 workers.
For Niue, as I think was announced earlier on, we expected to receive $7.7 million US to help us under the Met Services portfolio. However, it is very difficult. By saying that, we have not received the funds yet, but because, as I said, negotiations and process is very lengthy. However, a little bit of a good news is supposed to finalize this week, so we are hoping and praying that it will be finalized.
Due to the risk of the Delta COVID pandemic, the minister said that Cabinet had decided against sending a high-level delegation from Niue, but the government is committed to being part of the dialogue on climate change at COP26.
Originally, we were planning on attending. However, Cabinet have decided against going. That doesn't mean that we're not participating in a lot of the discussions that has been happening, especially the leaders had a meeting with the president back in July, the COP26 president. Obviously, the UK is the incoming president for COP26. So what their vision is that it will be a face-to-face meeting rather than virtual. I think the reason is that they want more meaningful outcomes and more robust outcomes at the get-go. However, for Niue, we're still very wary about the pandemic, and its cabinet have decided against attending personally or physically. But that's not to say that we will not be participating. I think there will be some arrangement in place, but we'll wait and see the final arrangements as to who will be there. Obviously, we have people outside. But just on that note as well, the Honourable Premier, Dalton Tangalangi, has been undertaking a lot of the high-level discussions regarding COP. So some of those arrangements and logistics have been undertaken by his team. So any further clarification as to attending or not attending, or who's attending, will be made at a later date by the Honourable Premier.
BCN News will bring more stories on the lead-up to COP26 in future bulletins. US children 12 to 15-year-olds will be receiving their Pfizer vaccine next month after the announcement today by New Zealand's Foreign Affairs Minister Honourable Nanaia Mahuta and Minister for Pacific Peoples Honourable Alopis William Seal. They spoke of the donation of vaccines to Niue and the Pacific nations. In a press release today, the ministers announced New Zealand's commitment to providing the Pfizer vaccine to the children of the realm countries, Niue, the Cook Islands and Tokelau. The Minister for Pacific Peoples, Honourable Alopis William Seal, says that they are committing to providing the Pfizer COVID-19 vaccine to the Cook Islands, Niue and Tokelau to support the vaccination of the 12 to 15-year-olds from October this year. New Zealand's Minister of Foreign Affairs, Honourable Nanaia Mahuta, said that these vaccines are part of New Zealand's ongoing commitment to supporting the global effort to combat COVID-19. New Zealand's High Commissioner to Niue, Her Excellency Helen Tana, in a statement to BCN News, says that they are pleased that New Zealand is able to support Niue's ongoing pandemic response by donating further vaccines for the 12 to 15-year-olds. She says that getting as much of Niue's population vaccinated is important, as we all want to protect ourselves, our families and our communities. The High Commission would also like to thank the Niue public health officials for their proactive approach that they have taken to ensure parents and caregivers and the teenagers themselves are informed about the vaccination. Her Excellency Helen Tana says that they look forward to the arrival of the vaccines in Niue very soon. Dr. Colin Tukuitonga says that his recommendation to the Niue government is to not allow passenger flights to Niue just yet. Even though Auckland has moved from level 4 lockdown to level 3, there are still many community transmission cases. Dr. Tukuitonga spoke to BCN via Zoom earlier this week. Dr. Colin Tukuitonga says that the situation in Auckland still poses high risk for Niue and that he had advocated for Auckland to remain in level 4 lockdown for another week.
The issue for me is, two things. One, we're still having cases around 20 new cases a day, certainly in the last 3 days. And that tells me that it's not declining. If anything, it's leveling off at that level. And then, of course, the evolving situation in the North Waikato. Hopefully, it doesn't spread beyond the immediate people there in those small communities. But I don't think that this is it's contained, but I wouldn't say that the risks have reduced. And that's why I advocated for remaining at level 4 for another week, at least till Friday, and then we can reassess. The other big reason from my point of view is the low vaccination rates in Māori and Pasifika people, and particularly our lot, which is part of the reason why we've set up this drive-in for the Niue community later this week. And really for something as serious as this, and we're really encouraging them to come along and get vaccinated.
The community event, spearheaded by Dr. Colin and a team of Niue health practitioners in Auckland, was set up at the LDS Chapel car park on Robertson Road in Mangere since yesterday and will be there until tomorrow. The intention is to vaccinate as many Niueans in Auckland as possible. BCN even helped with the messaging to help Niueans get vaccinated in Auckland by posting a short message from the Premier on our Facebook page 2 days ago. Dr. Colin was grateful for this type of messaging and hopes that it will result in people turning up.
And I think the Premier's message, like you can't come home to visit your family, if you don't have vaccination. I think that's going to move a lot of people to get off and get vaccinated.
The new $2 million power station funded by the Australian government as part of their assistance to improving power supply to the island is expected to be officially opened next year. Niue Power Corporation's General Manager, Brandon Kulasea, hopes that the work on the new power station at Tuila will be completed by the beginning of next year. In a statement, he told BCN News that unfortunately there had been some delays for the past few months due to COVID-19 and lockdowns, which had impacted on supplies getting to the island. The power station is part of the work Australia is doing that is of interest and value to Niue in its efforts to adapt and mitigate climate change. The old power station is no longer fit for purpose after several flooding incidents in recent years. The new power station is located right next door to the old one. The contractor for this project is Shop Exports with Mautama Constructions. And a small event was held at the Niue Golf and Sports Club earlier today when members of Cabinet, Honourable Mona Ainu and Honourable Sauni Tongatule officially handed over the keys to a green roller machine for the Niue Golf and Sports Club. Here's more on that story. James Douglas, the Secretary of the Niue Golf and Sports Club, said that the club's executive committee, under the leadership of their president Charles Ioane, put through proposals to purchase a green roller several months ago. James Douglas said that over the years the Niue golf teams have struggled when competing at regional events such as the Pacific Games because they are unfamiliar with the pace of those greens, which are extremely fast.
The purchase of our equipment started some months ago with the members agreeing with the executive committee's decision to purchase the green roller. The importance of the roller is to having good firm greens is essential to a golf course, and this current committee is committed to improving the golf course to a reasonable international standard. Over the years, our teams attending events such as the Pacific Games struggle due to the unfamiliar pace of the greens. They're extremely fast. Having a roller of this quality will enable us to improve our greens to a very high standard, which is the goal of all golf courses.
While most of the cost of the equipment and shipping was carried by the club, the Niue government contributed $10,000 towards the $27,000 total expenditure.
Equipment like this hopefully will be offering a challenging, well-manicured course. The public will be more encouraged to join. And this is our short-term goal, to get more memberships. Unfortunately, our membership is quite low, and every year it seems to be getting less and less, but the goal is to make it get more and more. So hopefully by improving our course, that will be the case.
The village of Makefu Falekawatua celebrated their 150th anniversary as a village last Saturday. The day was marked with the unveiling of a commemorative plaque, a church service, and of course a traditional feast for the dignitaries and invited guests. BCN cameras was also there. Premier Tangilangi and cabinet ministers were in attendance joining the village as they remember the history of the church and those pastors from yesteryear who served the Makefu, a village since the time of Nukai Penyamina, the Niuean who brought the word of God to Niue from Samoa in 1846, right to the current pastor of the village, Reverend Christopher Langiono. Head Deacon Charlie Tovaka recited some of this history, but he said at a later date the church and the village will be compiling a record of the past 150 years into a publication. The day started with the unveiling of the commemorative plaque mounted at the church entrance with the names of pastors from the past 150 years who served the people of Makefu and also people of Makefu who served in other villages around the island and abroad. As is customary with big celebrations, the day ended with a big feast hosted by the families of the village. And to end our bulletin tonight, the people of Alofis North had put on their best Showday yet last Saturday. And despite the clash with other events, such as that event at Makefu, families and friends from around the island turned up to support the Alofis North Village Showday at Paliasi. Alofis North's newly elected chairperson of the village council, E Maniwhakausi Manawa thanked the people for supporting their annual showday. He thanked the people of the village for their dedication to the activities leading up to the showday and for their commitment to showcasing the best the village has to offer this year. Member of Parliament for the village Honourable Vainga Tukuitonga spoke about how events on the island should be planned properly so that they don't clash with other village events. Honourable Tukuitonga was referring to the clash with the 150th celebrations at the village of Makefu, which also took place on Saturday. Minister of Social Services, Honourable Sauni Tongatule, who was there to open the Showday, supported these comments, saying that the village councils should remember that the annual Showdays is a highlight of the year for many families, where it is a time when they can make some extra money for their families. He says when organising events, they should be mindful to respect the annual village Showday calendar. Honourable Tukuitonga in his speech also asked support for the village water reservoir on the top terrace. She asked the New Zealand and Australian High Commissioners to help the village complete this project, which has taken 10 years.
Remember, we have a reservoir up at 4, Excellency. It's about 10 years, I think. We want that completed. Our people want to move up to the next terrace because of cyclones. We have been, well, I'm only telling you now, Excellencies, please help us. Because I know that you will help Alofis Tokelau. We always treasure you too, Excellencies. When you come to Alofis North, all the women, yes, especially me, I cherish you.
Overall, the Alofis North annual Showday was a success, showcasing some of the best performances from the Showdays this year, and credit to the young people of the village. Congratulations to the people of Alofis North for a successful Showday. The next village Showday is the village of Avasele in early October. But that's our bulletin of news for tonight. Do join me again on Tuesday next week for our bulletin in Wangahau. Until then, Munui Nepo, good night.